Hello, dear friends. Patrick here. January 31st, 2024. Pardon me. I was hoping I didn't have to make any more videos on atheism. I was hoping to move on to commentary, maybe on book reviews or politics, or maybe even some of my cringeworthy karaoke efforts. That was kind of fun. But since logging into YouTube now, I get inundated with these videos from Richard Dawkins because obviously YouTube knows that I'm interested in Dawkins and atheism. And so they keep feeding me these videos, and they're hard not to click on every once in a while. And so as I did this one short video clip, I clicked on, and Richard Dawkins is saying how evil faith is. He says because people that have faith are believing something without any evidence. So let me just play this clip for you, have a look, and I'd like to just talk about it for a brief moment or two.
Said in a speech famously that I think a case can be made that faith is one of the world's great evils, comparable to the smallpox virus, but harder to eradicate.
I do think that, yes. Because what I'm talking about there is faith, where faith means belief in something without evidence. Because if you believe something without evidence, then that justifies anything. You're no longer vulnerable to somebody coming back at you and saying, hang on a minute, let me argue the case. If you believe it without evidence, which is what faith is, then you don't argue the case. You say, no, I'm not arguing that case. This is my faith. It's mine. It's private. I don't dissent from it. I don't retreat from it. You're just going to have to accept it. Now, that is evil.
So hopefully that's been able to be spliced into this video. If not, I'll put a link to it down below. But you can see what he's saying, how if you listen to it closely, it's totally wrong. It's just completely ignorant of him to make such a statement. First of all, the last half of the video can be applied to atheism, where he says, I have this belief and you can't touch it and all that. That can totally be applied to atheism. Remember the famous Canadian atheist, David Suzuki, said, I believe there is no God. That's how he expressed his atheism. He said, I believe there's, at least he was honest enough to say it is a belief, right? A lot of atheists like to say, oh no, I just don't have beliefs, so I'm just this blank slate, which is a total lack of self-awareness, a total lie, and it's semantics on how they describe themselves. But anyway, Dawkins is saying how evil faith is. And if we look at the New Covenant, we see the statement that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the hope for things not seen, right? It's a belief in the things not seen is really what faith is. And that's a sort of an equivalence towards lack of evidence, you could say. There are lots of things that we believe. Even scientists believe things without direct evidence, that they have to infer. They have to hope that this is the case. They have a theory, and they're sort of saying, well, this is as much evidence as we have. Like, how much evidence do we have that tomorrow the sun is going to rise? Well, we're using the past history, and we're hoping that tomorrow is going to be better than today. We call that faith. We call faith having hope for what is unseen. And Dawkins is trying to destroy that. He's saying faith is evil. And our teacher told us in each gospel, he said, oh, you faithless people. He mentioned it in each gospel, but in two of the gospels, I think in Matthew and Luke, where he associated another term along with faithlessness. See, Richard Dawkins is faithless. He openly admits he has no faith. He doesn't want anything to do with faith, anything to do with belief that he doesn't have evidence that suits him. And so when we look at our teacher telling the people, oh, you faithless people, what does he add to that? He says, you faithless and perverse people, how long do I have to put up with you? Oh, you faithless and perverse generation, what's the matter with you? Why don't you have any faith? He says to them. Those two terms go together for some reason. Faithless and perversion, perverted. And by perversion, I'm not talking about the sexual perversion at this point, and maybe I'll mention it later, but if you look at the history of motivation, I studied as a young man motivation from the 20th, 19th century and as far back as I could find. 99% of it is based on biblical truths of sowing and reaping, of having faith that tomorrow could be better than today. almost all of it contains the application of faith in believing what you can't see, in believing what you don't have evidence for yet, that you're hoping will manifest in the future. Napoleon Hill, Anthony Robbins, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, it goes on and on and on. It goes back to Benjamin Franklin. Before him, old preachers like Cotton Mather. These guys used biblical principles and discovered, especially from the New Covenant, that faith was something valuable. That if you had faith, you could move mountains, as we're told from our teacher, right? Metaphorically, move mountains. That you can have a better tomorrow, that you can save up and buy that dream car that you want, or you can save up and get yourself an apartment, or become a better person, or pay taxes, or contribute to your community, or whatever goals that you have for yourself. You can be a successful person. You can be a contributor to society. If you take that away from people and you tell them faith is evil, you don't want to have faith, what are you contributing to? Misery, despair, hopelessness. Do you think that Richard Dawkins has not contributed to those things by his statements? Take a look at that clip again. He says, faith is evil. What happens when a person abandons the concept of faith? Their life becomes perverted. And by perverted, I mean turned away from the path of life and turned towards misery, hopelessness, drug addiction. We have rampant drug addiction in every major city in this country that has exploded because people have no faith. They don't believe there's a better tomorrow. They don't believe that they can do better. They hate themselves. They don't see any future. They don't have any hope. They don't have any hope for eternity. All it is to get high today. And that's all they can deal with because of teachings like this, because of these teachings that Richard Dawkins espouses through these kind of comments. Can you see how evil that is? The way that Dawkins replicates the words of Lucifer are in two main ways. The first way is when he says, "Yea, hath God said." He says, is that really God speaking through those scriptures? Is that really God speaking through Jesus the Christ, the Messiah? Was that really? Jesus said that he was speaking the words that his heavenly Father gave him to speak. And Richard Dawkins comes along and says, "Yea, is that really the words of God?" That's the first way he lies, just like Lucifer. And the second way he lies just like Lucifer, he says, "Ye shall not die." He says that when your body passes away, there's no soul, there's no spirit, he says in some of his videos. And these are the two main ways that Richard Dawkins is an instrument for his father, the devil, the serpent, the Lucifer of old that wants to destroy and deceive humanity. And what gets replaced when faith is taken away from people? Addiction, misery, sorrow, drug addiction, despair, suicide, all those horrible things that come in when you take away faith from a person, a hope for a better tomorrow, a hope in those things that are unseen, that you can do well, and that you can do well because God is on your side, as we've been taught, that we have a heavenly Father that cares for us. So think about actually what he's saying. And do you really want to elevate that? Do you really want to emulate that? Your king has no clothes. Richard Dawkins, the high priest, the king of atheism, is without merit. That video clip that he speaks is lacking totally in self-awareness, and it is a complete and utter lie. Why would anyone want to believe that? So look closely at what Dawkins is telling you, and you may want to reconsider and listen to the words of Jesus the Christ instead, because his words bring hope for a better tomorrow. his words inspire faith, not try and destroy it, not try and take it away. Something to consider. Thank you for watching. God bless you. I'll talk to you again soon. Take care of yourself. Spend time with people you love. I love you. We'll talk to you soon. Okay? Bye-bye now.